Our relationship had always been the kind that others envied. Vanessa and I had been together for years, and from the outside, everything seemed flawless. We met in college, and it was like we were meant to be. We were the couple that everyone looked at with a mix of admiration and envy, always laughing, always enjoying each other's company. But as with any relationship, things weren't always as perfect as they seemed. At first, the problems were minor, little disagreements that were easily brushed off and forgotten. But over time, those small issues began to accumulate. It started with Vanessa working late more often. She had always been dedicated to her job, but suddenly she was staying late almost every night. Urgent projects, she would say, but the frequency of these late nights began to raise red flags. I didn't think much of it initially. Everyone has busy periods at work, right? But soon, Vanessa became increasingly vague about her whereabouts after work. When I asked her what she was doing or who she was with, her answers were always just a bit too vague. Just the usual, she'd say with a forced smile, meetings and then maybe drinks with the team. Her phone habits also changed. She started stepping out of the room whenever her phone rang, and when I'd ask her about it, she'd brush it off, saying it was just a friend or a work-related call. I wanted to trust her. I really did. But something about her tone, the way she'd avoid eye contact, started to eat away at me. It wasn't like her to be so secretive. One night, while we were curled up on the couch watching a movie, her phone buzzed. She quickly grabbed it, her eyes darting to the screen. I caught a glimpse of the name, Jason. I knew a Jason from her work, but she rarely mentioned him. When I asked her who it was, she hesitated before responding, "Oh, just Jason. He's asking about some work stuff." "Why would he need to ask you about work at 10 p.m.?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light despite the growing suspicion inside me. "Oh, you know how it is," she replied, her eyes glued to her phone as she typed a quick response. "Some people just can't switch off." That night, as she slept beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My mind replayed her reaction to that text, the way she'd avoided my gaze. It seemed like a small thing, but it planted a seed of doubt that kept growing. Days passed, and I tried to push those doubts aside, but they only grew stronger. Every late night, every secretive phone call, every time she laughed a bit too hard at a joke she refused to share with me, made me more paranoid. I started questioning everything she did, wondering if my fears were justified, or if I was simply imagining things. The turning point came when she mentioned a weekend retreat with some colleagues. "It's just a team-building thing," she said casually, but I could sense the underlying tension in her voice. "You know how these things are. Boring but mandatory." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that it was just another work-related event. But a gnawing feeling in my stomach told me that there was more to it than she was letting on. The thought of spying on her crossed my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What kind of husband spies on his wife? In the end, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. I told myself that I was being paranoid and that my insecurities were getting the best of me. But as I sat alone that weekend, my mind kept wandering to where she was, who she was with, and what she was really doing. When Vanessa returned, she seemed distant, almost distracted. I asked her about the retreat, and she gave me a vague response about workshops and team bonding activities. She didn't go into any details, and I didn't press her for more. I was too afraid of what I might uncover. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying every interaction we'd had over the past few months, searching for clues that would either confirm or dispel my suspicions. I wanted to trust her, but that nagging doubt wouldn't go away. And so I made a decision. I needed to find out the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. The day I decided to confront Vanessa was the day everything changed. I had spent countless sleepless nights turning things over in my mind, and I could no longer tolerate the uncertainty. I needed to know what was really going on, and the only way to do that was to confront her directly. I waited until she was getting ready for one of her late-night work meetings, or so she said. She was in the bathroom, fixing her makeup, when I noticed her phone buzzing on the dresser. Driven by a mix of anxiety and suspicion, I grabbed the phone and saw a message from Jason. My heart raced as I opened it. The message read, "I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you. Let's meet at the usual spot." Scrolling through the conversation, I saw more messages about how Jason was eagerly looking forward to their time together and how Vanessa had been making plans. The intimacy in their messages was clear, and it was evident they had been meeting up frequently. When Vanessa walked out of the bathroom, I was still holding her phone. Her eyes widened as she saw me with it, and she quickly tried to grab it from my hand. "What are you doing with my phone?" she demanded, her voice laced with panic, but I was too overwhelmed to respond immediately. I showed her the screen, my hands shaking uncontrollably. "Who is Jason, Vanessa? Why are you talking to him like this?" She looked at the phone, her face draining of color as she read the messages. Tears welled up in her eyes and she sank onto the edge of the bed, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, breaking. "I didn't want you to find out this way." "How long?" I asked, my voice cracking. "How long has this been going on?" "A few months," she admitted, her tears flowing freely now. "It started off as just talking, but then, I don't know. It just happened." The ground felt like it had been pulled out from beneath me. A few months? She had been seeing this guy for months, and I had been completely unaware. My trust had been shattered, and I felt utterly betrayed. "Why?" I asked, barely able to speak. "Why would you do this? We were happy, weren't we?" She shook her head, her sobs growing more intense. "I don't know why I did it. It was a mistake. I'm so sorry." I wanted to scream, cry, throw something, anything to release the pain and anger that were boiling inside me. But instead, I just sat there, numb, struggling to process the full extent of her betrayal. "Do you love him?" I asked, dreading the answer. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "I don't love him. It was just a distraction." Her words did nothing to ease the pain. I had spent so much time preparing myself for this moment, but now that it was real, I was lost. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "I want to fix this. I'll end things with Jason, I promise." I wanted to believe her, to think that we could somehow work through this. But the betrayal was too fresh, the wound too deep. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. "I need some time," I said, standing up and walking toward the door. "I need to think." I left, the sound of her sobs fading behind me as I walked out the door, feeling completely lost. In the days that followed, I felt like I was living in a fog. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, confusion. I didn't know how to move forward or if I even wanted to. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave Vanessa and never look back. But another part of me, the part that still loved her despite everything, wanted to find a way to make it work. I stayed with a friend for a few days, needing space to think. Vanessa called and texted constantly, begging me to come home, to talk to her, to give her a chance to make things right. One evening, after days of silence, I decided it was time to confront her again. I returned to our apartment, determined to have a final conversation about what we would do next. Vanessa was waiting for me, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as I walked in. "I've been trying to reach you. I want to make things right, I swear. I ended things with Jason." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "I don't know if that's enough. I need to know if this can be fixed, if we can move past this." "I understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'm committed to making it up to you, but I know it will take time." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I need time to think, Vanessa. This is too much to process right now. I don't know if I can just jump back into things like nothing happened." She nodded, her face a mix of relief and despair. "I understand. Just know that I'm here, ready to work on it if you decide to give us another chance." I left the apartment feeling lost and unsure. I didn't have any clear answers or solutions. As I walked away, I felt overwhelmed by the uncertainty of what to do next. The weight of the past few weeks was heavy on my shoulders, and the path forward seemed unclear and daunting.